Zentangle is a type of art. You could call it a drawing or a composition in which all or most of the spaces are filled with patterns. When I call it a composition, I mean that while you can make a Zentangle or Zendoodle look however you want, it doesn't have to look like anything in particular. In other words, most Zentangles are abstract. But either way, we're trying to compose the parts of our Zentangle in a way that uses the whole space in fun and interesting ways. Some people also use Zentangle patterns to fill in block letters, landscapes, and other more representational drawings. We can look at the first step of making a Zentangle as making ourselves a coloring page that we're going to fill in with patterns and drawings. Here I made a composition of a bunch of different shapes. All of the shapes I used were normal household objects. I'll show you what I mean. These are the everyday, ordinary objects I traced to make my starting Zentangle coloring page. You could use anything in your home. Bowls, plates, toys. You could definitely trace toys. Anything that you think is a fun shape. When we trace our shapes, I need to take my time and work slowly as I hold down the shape or the object and slightly pressing against it, I'm gonna pull my pencil all the way around. I might have to stop and adjust my grip so that I can get all the way around the shape. Then I can move on to my next shape or move this one object to a different spot. Right, nice even shape. We also want to make sure that sometimes our objects overlap. I'll use this instead, that they overlap or that they go over the edge of the paper. That makes our composition more interesting, like this. There we go. And now I have this extra space that I can fill in with a different pattern. I'm gonna add a bunch more shapes. And I might even add in some lines that connect different parts of my composition. That. Maybe I want to connect this edge to this edge. And like I mentioned before, I can also do this with a book. If I don't have a ruler, I can use the edge of a book to line up to the edge of one of my parts and pressing against it, draw my pencil down. And I've got a nice straight line. I already finished this composition and this is the one I'll fill in today. But before I start to fill it in, I should probably do a little bit of planning on what kind of patterns I want to use in my Zentangle. Just like in other subjects, when we get a word bank, I like to make myself a pattern bank so that when I'm short of ideas, I have somewhere to look and I can quickly come up with what to use for my next space. There are lots of ideas for patterns online, and I'll add a couple links below so that you have some inspiration for your own pattern bank. Now, to make the pattern bank, I am going to use my book just to make a few squares on my paper. Okay. that I'll fill in with different shapes. I like to give a little space in between each square, just in case while I'm practicing I go a little outside the lines. But you could just make a big grid, or you could trace some circles. Like I could have used my coaster to trace circles to fill in. I like squares. They can be as big or as small as you want, but you do want to give yourself space to come up with a bunch of different ideas and fill them in. All right, now that my pattern bank is ready, I can start filling in with different kinds of lines like zigzags. I could fill it in with polka dots. Maybe I want to do some flowers. Maybe some stars, if you know how to do those. You could also do this kind of star. Or different combinations of thick and thin lines. These don't have to be the perfect, slow, carefully done versions that you're gonna do in your Zentangle. They can just be quick sketches of things that you think you might like to use. The important thing to remember while you're making your pattern bank is that if you're trying a pattern and it's just too hard, or it's frustrating, or it's just not fun, skip it. Go on to the next one. You don't have to worry about it. I'm done with my pattern bank, so it's time for me to pull out my paper, my composition, and I'm ready to get going filling in spaces. So just like with a coloring page, I'm gonna pick any space to get started and work from there. So I feel like this is a good place to get started, and I'm just gonna start filling it in with my pencil so that if I make any mistakes, I can erase them and try again. All right, now that I have done my whole, filled in all of my spaces, done my whole page in pencil, I need to trace all of these pencil designs in pen or marker. I would go with something thin, like one of these guys. This is just a regular old ballpoint pen. These are kind of inkier pens. I have a felt tip around here somewhere. That works just fine too. But any black pen that you can find will work just fine. And then when we're done tracing with pen, we're going to erase all of the extra pencil mark. So make sure you keep that pen nearby so that when you erase, if you forgot to color something in, you can quickly trace it with the pen and then erase the pencil lines. All right, now I'm done tracing in black pen, and it's time for me to erase all of the pencil lines. As you might notice, I didn't trace perfectly on the lines in a lot of places, and that's okay because the lines are about to go and all you'll see is where I put the pen. That's why we need to work very carefully with pen so that we have it exactly how we want to have it. The pencil is just there as a guide. The pen is permanent. All right, that's it. If I have colored pencils or markers or crayons I'd like to use to color it in, I can do that now. And I think I am. I think I'm gonna use some colored pencils to color mine in, but markers work just fine. You can absolutely use crayons if it works for you, but if you have a lot of small spaces, it might not be very easy to do with crayon. I prefer colored pencils over anything else. But if you don't have them, you can also just leave it black and white. You could even go back in with pen and color some of the spaces in black. Like maybe I want to go back in with my pen and color all of these squares in black. Or I want to fill in the little dots or make little lines in between every other line. Anything that I can do to add a little bit of detail and coloring in could add some fun and interest to our Zentangle. Well, here you go. The final version of my Zentangle, all colored in with colored pencils. If you'd like to see a slower time lapse of the Zentangle process, I'm also uploading the video of how I filled in the Zentangle letters from the beginning of the video. Also, this is just a good way to start by making yourself a coloring page and filling it in. As you could see in the examples from the beginning, there are a lot of creative things you can do once you're comfortable making Zentangles.